We stop identifying as what I say as a creative human.
Mm,
And so we no longer maintain our connection with it, our trust in it, our belief that we are it, that we do have this innate talent that we all have. So I always say it's still there somewhere. You're just not connecting with it or using it in a performative, productive way. We've sort of defaulted to you either are or you aren't.
Welcome to Future Fit Leadership, a podcast for leaders at every stage who want to stay relevant in a world that keeps changing. Leadership has shifted. The pace is faster, the expectations are higher, and the future is calling for a different kind of leader. One who is human-centered, grounded, and able to balance capability with empathy. These conversations bring together global perspectives on the skills and mindsets that help people and organizations thrive. Hello and welcome to Future Fit Leadership. I hope wherever you are listening to this podcast, you are well. Most organizations will say that they want innovation. But if you look closely at how they operate, very few actually ask for creativity from their people, and fewer still know how to build it. In this episode, I sit down with Matt Hart, and we get into a shift that I think many leaders are feeling but haven't quite named yet. And that is that leadership is no longer just about direction and execution. It's becoming a more creative role. Matt has worked across global brands, media, technology, and education. And what sits underneath all of that experience is a consistent question. Why do organizations rely on a small group of ideas people when creativity is something we all have? His view is very clear. We don't lose creativity as we grow up. We just stop identifying with it. We stop trusting it. And in most workplaces, we stop being asked to use it. In this conversation, we talk about the skills that are now becoming central to leadership: curiosity, empathy, collaboration, and resilience. Not as nice to haves, but as the core of performance in a world where knowledge and competence are increasingly supported by AI. We also unpack what a creative leader actually does, how they create conditions for others to think, how they hold space instead of controlling outcomes, and how they build cultures where ideas are not just encouraged, but expected. And there's a practical edge to all of this, because this isn't about becoming a different kind of person. It's about reconnecting with the capability that's already there and learning how to use it deliberately. So if you've ever looked at your team and thought, we're capable of more, but we're not quite getting there, this conversation may help you understand why. Please enjoy Matt Hart. Well, hello, Matt Hart. Welcome to Future Fit Leadership. How are you today?
I'm great. Thank you, Sadhana. Thank you so much for having me on. I'm looking forward to this.
Well, I'm excited to talk to you because when I did the research on you, I noticed that from your bio, you're a founder of Better Ideas Faster, which we'll talk about. But
Sure.
beyond that, you've partnered with some of the most influential brands, and I'll name a few, which got my interest peaked, but people like American Idol, BBC, Ed Sheeran, Cisco, Spotify, UNICEF. Talk to us about what you've done with these businesses.
Yeah, it's a mix of, I always try and explain because people go, well, innovation, what is it? What do you
Yeah,
actually do?
yeah.
And I always say, I've over the years, I come at innovation through, the easiest way to think about it is through three disciplines. So one is either the new product innovation, so the brand, the new idea, the new service, whatever you're innovating to add new value and market. Then I got really interested in, and that includes a lot of branding work as well, obviously. But then I got really interested in, well, why couldn't people do that work themselves? What was lacking in people and organizations that meant they had to have someone like me or people like us with this kind of resource to help them do that work? And then when you go from actually starting to help people reconnect, identify as creative people, unlock and unleash that as value in the business, you then bump up against this thing called culture. So how is the business organizing and operating itself? And is it a barrier to people being really creative at work? Or is it actually organized to unleash that potential of people that a CEO or a leader will always tell you my real value here is my people, but how do we organize what we call culture, a way of operating, a way of being, thinking and doing that unleashes that power? So I went through that journey of understanding and applying and bringing those three disciplines together. And then rather than treat them as three disciplines, BIF I set up, or Better Ideas Faster, actually said that you can take people on a journey through that experience. So you can ideate, yes, you can innovate the new ideas and new value, and actually we can look to unleash our capacities to do more of that, and then build new capabilities to lock that in and keep it going. So those are the sort of the three disciplines. And then in terms of the breadth of work, on whether it's a brand, technology company, charity, education, government, or an artist, you're looking to apply that rather than in a linear way, sort of looking for the connections between that work to solve the problem that they're trying to solve, or grab the opportunity they're going after.
You talk a lot about creativity in the work that
Yes.
you do, and it's something that we lose over time, is what you talk about. And I find that really interesting because I look at some of the young children. I think I said to you off air that I've got a grandson, and I'm watching him. He's starting to color now, and he's being really creative on the colors. And he can't draw for save his life, but he's everything he does has got a creative background to it. And as you talk about, we lose it over time. Why do you think that happens? What happens to us that we go from these really creative young souls into adults that don't feel the need to be creative anymore? And just not in art, but in everything.
Yeah, and everything, because first off, let's just be really clear, because people get really not confused, but have misinterpretations of the kind of when we were to use like creativity, what
Mm,
do we actually mean? So we're not talking about an artistic talent, whether you can sing, write, dance, draw, illustrate, etc. We're talking about the capacity to think creatively, and of course, in the enterprise context, have that come through to solve problems, create new ideas, drive new value in the business, to respond to what's going on, to create new. And so I wouldn't use the language like that we lose it. What I would say is that we stop identifying as what I say as a creative human.
mm,
And so we no longer maintain our connection with it, our trust in it, our belief that we are it, that we do have this innate talent that we all have. So I always say it's still there somewhere. You're just not connecting with it or using it in a performative, productive way. And then what some of the reasons are that businesses just don't ask for it, demand it,
mm,
use it well. You ask any CEO or C-suite leadership team, or look at their values, they will have something about creativity, innovation. We are people who innovate, etc., and respect that and reward that. But when you get under the skin of the organization and what they're doing, they don't actually
mm,
demand it or ask for it or support it. They don't train it. So creativity is a learnt skill. Innovation is a learnt skill. How you do that at work. We've sort of defaulted to you either are or you aren't. And then we find these organizations tend to start operating between they're an ideas person, they're not. And there's only a
mm.
few of them in the business. And let's get them to come and help us have an idea. Whereas my belief is more democratic. We all have that
We all
talent.
have ideas.
It's not if you are, it's how you are. And it's not that everyone is that sparky ideas person. In the breadth of innovation processes, you need all kinds of creativity to be applied from origination to making happen.
And also, I think in the world that we're working in today, where technology is moving so fast and so many things are changing in business, not just technology, but just how we do business, consumer is driving a lot of that as well. Without the creativity, businesses are just going to become extinct, aren't they?
Totally, totally. Well, I'm getting really fascinated and interested and re-energized by the impact of AI. Because the way I come at that is the creative brain, not just the word creative. The creative brain is a gateway to the deeper, what used to be called the soft skills, which are now becoming the hard skills of performance in business.
Mm, mm.
So things like curiosity, empathy,
I was,
collaboration, resilience, the way you access
yeah.
those talents that employers and organizations are looking for, the way you train them is through creativity. And it's how you access those.
It's interesting you mentioned those because out of all the conversations that I've had with leaders on this podcast, curiosity, collaboration, resilience, empathy, they are the skill sets that all of these leaders across the globe believe need to be hardwired in that future fit leader. You know,
And Sadhana, why is that? Why is that? Because competence and knowledge has now been usurped by the rise of AI and will continue
mm,
to be.
mm,
So whatever was, we talk about, especially for leaders, it used to be about competence, about time, about knowledge and experience.
yeah. Yeah.
Well, now a lot of that it can be delivered through machine and machine intelligence. So I talk about the stack that sort of goes hardware, software, humanware. Hardware and software are continually eating into those parts of ourselves, and what we have to nurture and develop and unleash for value in the business is the irreplaceable parts of human talent and all the other stuff that can be automated or digitized. Let's
Mm.
have AI do that.
Mm.
But an AI doesn't have a lived experience. And
No.
so when you mentioned the consumer, being driven by the consumer and what's going on in ideas and market, AI cannot, it can give you data about that, it can give you fantastic analysis about that, but the lived felt experience of those ideas playing a role in our customers' lives, that is an empathetic challenge, how we
Mm-hmm.
deeply understand that.
Mm-hmm.
How do we bring that empathy back into the business as insight, as human intelligence that we can innovate and create around? And yes, support all of that quality of information or knowledge with the quantity that AI can give us.
Mm. So, with all the work that you've done in so many different industries, corporate organizations, education, technology, what has that range taught you about how people think and behave?
Well, that's a really good question. That's quite a deep question. But what I constantly see, and I see the problem that first needs to be solved. You ask any business, they're looking for growth, looking to
Mm-hmm.
solve problems, they're looking to hold the audiences they have got in today's market and try and grow new audiences. And that challenge, sometimes they used to think like, we need a new idea, or we need to understand our market better. And I have started to see that actually the real unlock for organizations is why I come at this through creativity, which often presents that barrier of understanding what creativity is, to get to the heart of people,
Mm-hmm.
and to get to the heart of people and how they identify and connect with their own talent they've got and build new confidence to surface and collaborate it with others. I see that across every domain, Sadhana. Whether it's music and entertainment, obviously I've done a lot of work in that space. That is driven by a felt experience of music. And so people who work in that space are really drawn to art and music, but the creativity for them lives in the product and the artists that they're creating. And yet their work is about creating support to take that music to the biggest audiences. Or it could be the other land where it's FMCG or whatever. It's always about an individual's connection with the deep story of who they are. Is that story working for them? Part of that I'm looking to surface is that I am a creative human. I do have creative talents that I can collaborate with others, and together we can collaborate that new value into the work. I see that across everywhere. It's a human problem, not just an organization problem.
Mm. You talk a lot about humanware as the capability we need to focus on in the AI driven world. What does it actually mean in practice for leaders?
For leaders, I think two things. One is in today's world, if you've not done the work on yourself, how can you lead for it? I think leaders can really quickly be found out.
Mm-hmm.
And the others, that ultimately leaders are about holding the space for others to perform. They're there to lead and lead others to do the work that we're trying to do, deliver the strategies we're trying to work towards, and the culture in which that happens. And so I see leaders having to really broaden their range of how they operate for others so that they can be the leader. Because as you said, today's markets are moving so fast, the iteration of ideas in market and the changes in market, the responses required. The Route One leader that used to be, I'm out in front, I know exactly where we're going, all follow me.
Mm-hmm.
That's just out of date in today's modern market. A leader today needs much more range and depth. What does range look like? I'm holding the space, but do I let others step up? Hey, I now need to be really collaborative because I've got to get my arms around people so that we're really galvanizing and doing this together. Or, yeah, sometimes there's a big, bold bet, and I do need to show that I'm leading the way. And I was thinking about this prior to our talking. I got introduced to this kind of leadership on a client project years ago with an organization, BBC Radio 1. There's a whole story to it, but back in the day, if you were an artist and you could get your single on Radio 1, you were on your way to global fandom. So it was a really important channel. And we had a few problems in the shows, the relationship between the producers and the talent, the sort of product of the show, the presenter. And I watched the leader at that time, a guy called Andy Parfit, an extraordinary leader with a broad range of styles who could fit the context of what was required. And he said, what I want to do in terms of empowerment, in terms of holding space, is I want you to know when you're in that booth on that show and you're representing the strategy that we've built that I want you to deliver, you've got my back. I'm
Mm,
giving you a chit. I'm giving you a piece of my power to be me in that context. It's not me out here, centralized, control and command over here.
mm,
You go
mm,
do what you're doing. It's
mm.
atomized, it's distributed. My lead, and that was back, Sadhana, this is 20 years ago.
20 years ago.
Yeah, it was
Mm.
extraordinary. And I think that's today's leadership challenge. Holding space, looking inward, still been looking outward, and really developing range to be that way. I was just going to say, you can't do that inauthentically. You
No.
still have to do that to a sense of truth about who you are. But yeah, it is, I believe it's much more demanding for leaders today.
Oh, I totally agree with you. I'm interested to know in the exposure you have with the different brands and leaders that you work with, is it a space that we're moving into easily and quickly, or are you still seeing leaders hold on to the old, pre-COVID ways of doing things? Is kind of where my marker sits because I think post-COVID everything changed, right?
I 100% agree with you. I think we're in a liminal space. I do think we're
Mm,
in that transitional space where they've sort of
mm,
got one in the camp of it used to be control and command. I understand this world. I would say something, it would get diffused down to the organization, and that would happen, and then it would come back up the chain. And then the other world where taking lots of learnings from technology practices, iteration, sprint working, project working, squads, teams. You see
mm-hmm.
all of this change coming into large organizations, driven a lot by consultancies who are packaging some of those approaches and giving them names and saying, here's a new method. And as a leader, you're going, I used to be really comfortable from this way. I sort of know we need to get over here, but I don't know it.
Mm, mm,
I have a confidence issue or my own capabilities issues to understand how I lead that way. I think it's also been driven a lot by the new talent that the organization is
mhm,
trying to bring in, which is the impact of Gen Z into
mm.
organizations. Gen Z is sitting there interviewing the organization, going, tell me why I should choose to come and work for
Yeah.
you,
Yeah.
you know?
What does working with you look like? Do I get to
Yeah,
work 3 days at home now?
yeah. And I think that's really challenging for old school
Mm,
leaders who were brought
mm,
up in a way that they were comfortable with based on their knowledge of experience. Now that doesn't trade
mm.
across so much.
I'm interested to hear your thoughts on the reliance on AI and technology, not just at a leadership level, but at a business level. And there's been a lot of talk around how there is concern on the impact it'll have on critical thinking, where we just automatically assume that the answer the AI has given us is correct, and we don't question it and we don't fact check it. And a lot of people have been caught out in that, and we copy and paste the answers in emails, etc. What are your thoughts? Do you think, long term we will have a generation that comes through with their reliance on AI actually impacts critical thinking?
100%. I think that's the real danger. And absolutely. And we are at a bit of a fork in the road on which way
Mm,
that's going to go.
mm,
I'm sure you're across all these new studies coming out about cognitive
yeah,
offloading.
yeah.
And I've noticed it myself because I've been using my own self as a test pilot.
Mm-hmm,
And you do, and I work internationally, so I work weird hours, and I'm working with a co-founder, my partner up in the UK. And we're both on Claude, etc., and we're maxing out Claude. And we speak to each other and go, you've got to get off it sometimes and
mm,
rediscover that innate capacity to dream, to imagine, to connect, to sit and surface what's coming out. All the practices I did have, and knowingly choose to use AI as an augmentation of my talent, not a replacement.
mm-hmm,
I think, as ever, the burden is on us, not the tool, because the tool's going to go and be what the tool
yeah.
is, and knowing that we still have to do our human practices to continue developing the talents. Well, I think the real challenge today, and I've started to language it, is that we need to, it's not just, we used to talk about continual learning, always be learning. I think we're now moving very quickly to a place where we're always becoming.
Mm,
We're always becoming a deeper, fuller version or expression of ourselves and the talents we have. as AI is tracking with us. And I've been using an agentic solution that's in test for my programs, knowing that people really struggle to connect and grow new confidence in that innate creativity they have. It can happen when I'm there, it can happen when we're in the workshop, but when that's not happening in that held space, they lose that connection with it and they default to the behaviors that they were doing that weren't working for them.
Mm-hmm.
I've started, and it's a dangerous solution because I think it has to come with, really strong guardrails and boundaries. But an agentic solution can then sit beside them and be their coach to coach them into that human talent, is where I see AI being the best use of itself. Not to replace that talent, but to nurture, nudge, reward, and augment and ultimately unleash that talent. But
Mm-hmm.
it's still an unknown, Sutter. No one can tell you that that is the way that it's going to happen because we're in brand new spaces.
We don't know. And it's interesting. I'll use an example in, with the podcast in itself. So I have a AI product that I go, tell me the 10 best snippets that you've heard on this conversation. And I thought, okay, they're interesting 10 best snippets. And I thought, let me test this. And I went and listened to the podcast myself. Now, as the human listening to it, knowing who my audience is, I picked completely different snippets to what the
Of
AI
course.
had done. And that's a perfect example of where the AI has no empathy, no emotional connection. It's looked at something from a very transactional lens, potentially. It's made a lot of assumptions. If I just followed it blindly, I wouldn't have had the same connection with my audience potentially than if I'd listened to it myself and said, no, 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 please go to where Matt talks about this and create a 30-second snippet for me.
100%. Because what happens, because you are a human and you have lived or living experience, when you're listening to a podcast and it resonates with something deep inside you, you sort of drift off from listening and you go into that
Mm,
experience, that sort of
mm,
daydreaming brain, and then you come back with something new. You're impacted by that. The
yeah,
AI can't do that. It's just pattern matching
yeah.
at extraordinary compute levels.
What do you think a human first organization looks like?
I think it's a creative organization.
Mm,
I was thinking when you were talking about leadership and future fit leadership, I think leadership in the past was a functional role. And I think today now the shift and transition is that it's a creative role.
I
You
love
are
that.
you are creating conditions, and that will differ day in, day out, depending on what's happening within your organization and what's happening without it. And giving both of those two worlds are changing so fast, you as a leader now needs to create yourself and lead for that kind of creativity in people.
And my next question on that is conditions would a creative leader create within their organization to produce better ideas and have highly functioning teams?
So again, I always go to because I was as interested in how we go about solving problems than just solving the problem. And what you find is you have to do the inside outside. It is a tension of opposites. It's how do I first sink into myself? So number one, a creative leader has to be confident that they are a creative human and know how that creativity expresses for them.
So, can I ask, how do they do that? Because early on, we talked about, we've lived in a world, we've gone, not everybody is creative, right? Because
Yeah.
we have a certain idea or we become less creative as we get older. So, how do I then tap into that part of me that I've probably quietened?
So it starts with all of my work regarding it, regardless of who it was in the world or where it goes to, I go to the neuroscience of the creative brain. So over the years of creative practice, I've studied research. I'm now doing a PhD in creative practice to explore where that starts from as a human, and it takes you into the realms of consciousness, all that great stuff, quantum, etc. The gateway of accessing your creative brain, your innate talents, and there's lots of science behind this, is the four brain states, proven neuroscience of the creative brain and how you access it. And there's fundamentally two different states between a divergent or convergent way of thinking. And they are conscious states.
Mm,
You can be in one, you can be in the other. And you, starting as a creative leader, first need to know what gets you into a creative state.
mm,
Feeling, thinking, experiencing your creativity as a sense of possibility and potential. And knowing that is very different from the leader who is analyzing, judging, making decisions, choosing pathways, etc. You as a leader first need to know how that looks and feels for you. There are commonalities on how it expresses for all of us in terms of whether it's we have ideas in the shower, or
Mm,
whether it's outside of work, walking down the path, listening to music, in the gym, being in the ocean, Australia, all of that beautiful environments we enjoy down in this part of the world. They tend to engender what's called an alpha mind. We open to our creativity. We feel a sense of possibility. You as a leader first need to anchor all of that into what that means for you. And I can tell you, Sadhana, when I work with leadership teams and CEOs, all of that is brand new for them.
Oh, I
That's
can
why
imagine.
that's why I say creativity is a trained skill. It's a learnt skill. You haven't learnt the language or the science and then applied it to yourself for how you then apply it as a leader. Then, if we get that going, right, and that's a challenge,
Mm,
how do I then nurture and develop that in my people to get the best from them so they too can have that same experience, both as individuals and then in collaborative teams? So it's a programmatic journey of taking them on that journey towards the envisioned place of where they want to get to. Then, of course, in an organization as a leader, you have a purpose, you have value sets, you have strategy, you have environments. You can create ways to support people being how you want them to be, how you need them to be. That includes innate capacities of creativity and idea generation and insightfulness and empathy and
mm,
curiosity. Because to answer your question, how do I create those conditions? You create an empathetic organization. You
mm,
create a curious organization. You are porous to the world. You have people who are looking out at competitors, at threats, at opportunities, bringing that intelligence back in. And in the culture, you've created structural ways of making that work.
mm. So for leaders listening to this thinking, well, I've never been that person, or I don't have the confidence to be that creative person because I actually don't even know where to start,
Yeah,
and I
yeah.
don't see myself as creative anymore. How do you rebuild it in them?
Well, the first thing to say is it's in them. So they
Mm,
were that person. And we talked about, and this is not about being childish, but you were that person when you were young and small.
mm,
You were just
mm,
innately creative and
mm,
curious and learning about the world. So it's in all of us. It's not in some. We're all born with it. It's then whether we've been educated or developed away from that confidence that we really have that within us. So the key challenge is to, yes, give them the knowledge of what that is, and then have them experience the benefit of that. Now, the benefits of that, Sana, it's a bit of a magic unlock because it's not just about performance and value at work. It's slowness of mind. It's being able to decompress after the day. It's the meditation and well-being that the
mhm.
HR team is trying to bring
Get you to
about in their
do.
leadership styles. So I really do believe we're going to come and see as AI keeps progressing for our leaders in our businesses and organizations that the real unlock they're looking for and the new unlock will be a redefinition of their thinking of what creativity actually is, how it relates to them, how it exists within them, and then what they can do to bring and strengthen that muscle again. Because it's just atrophied. It
Hmm.
hasn't gone anywhere. You just haven't reconnected with it. And then getting over their assumptions about what a creative human is, flamboyant, artistic, out there in the world. Some of the most creative people, and whenever you say this, everyone agrees, is the quiet person in the creative session who never says boo. And then when you ask for any other thoughts, can we create the space for people? They they
They
they
snap up.
speak
Yeah.
up with a piece of gold that you wish you'd heard a long time ago.
Yeah, at the start of the session rather than at the
Exactly.
end of it. Yeah. Do you think the next generation are coming through? This is an interesting question because I know that there was a survey done recently in Australia about how people are quietly cracking. It's an American term, and the survey did so looked at 1,000 people, and they quietly cracking not because of what's happening at work, but because of the pressures of everyday living. My rent's gone up,
Yeah.
affordability is hard, petrol's going up, there's a war that I can't control. What does that mean for my life? And so they're bringing these pressures to work and they're quietly cracking. But part of that also is that they don't want to step up into leadership positions. So
Yeah.
a lot of the generation coming through are going, nah, we've seen you guys. It's too hard. You work too hard. I'm not interested in it. When you work with the next generation, the younger generation coming through, do you think they are coming through far more creative than the existing set of leaders? Or is it a skill set that we will need to build in them as well?
100% the latter. It is a skill set, and I am working with young people. A big
Yeah.
part of my work now is Gen Z, mainly because I've done a lot of work with artists and music, so I connect with young people a lot. I'm an older dad. I've got my own young kids, so I'm really interested in their health and well-being, their future, the
Mm,
impact of AI, all of those things you mentioned. And I've actually developed a program. So I'm not here to sell you, but to tell you the principles of what it is. They have grown up in a digital world with screens in their lives, and we never did.
hmm
And I think the negative impacts of that are coming through now are huge and profound. My wife's a family therapist. She works in eating disorders. She's at the extreme end of that. The loss of identity, the social pressures, the always on, the
hmm
dopamine hits. These are really having a negative impact on our next generations. What I find, and also what I call the substitution of self. So they are seeing an unreal version of how people are living on their screens every day. And AI is starting to substitute for that expression of people. The thing we need to develop in them most that will overcome some of this lack of purpose, lack of meaning, lack of direction, commitment, etc., the anxiety they feel, is personhood, a strength of themselves, the idea within them and who they want to become, and surfacing that in a way that they can be confident that that can be realized in the world. That we give them back that identity, their story of themselves,
mm,
so that they can come to know themselves anew. That's the first thing we need to do. In Te terms, it's called whakapapa. It's called the story of you, the history of you, who you are now, where you want to be going. So I see this that we first need to give them back a sense of identity that they can own. Once they can start to surface and be confident around some parts of their inner lived experience and surface that into the world, we can then give them creativity and innovation to start to create around that, to start to put more of themselves into the world. And then I talk about this idea of we'll start to make that happen. Once you have the skills of creativity and innovation, make it happen. Well, however that looks for you in your life, get a job, right?
mm,
Start a venture, collaborate with
mm.
others, get a side hustle, commit to a work for a while. So that's there. I call it know, create, make. Those are the three steps we need to give them back and hold their hands. How organizations can support that is to be very clear, not just around the functional benefits of work, but to help them see how what parts they're reaching for in themselves can find expression and connection in our organization and what we're trying to do, where we're trying to go, the customers we're trying to serve. Come and be on that journey with us and help co-create it with us. Because I will tell you one thing and see if you agree with this, Sadhana. If you were a young person today and we were told in our generation, I'm Gen X, if we were told to look up and out and emulate and be like those who went before us,
Mm.
if you said that to a Gen Zer today, what would they tell you?
Absolutely not.
You guys have fucked the world, excuse my
Yeah.
language. Why
Yeah.
should I do what you've done? What
Yep.
opportunities have I got? And what we find, and I've got, I'm a co-founder of a hospo e-learning business in the UK. So we work a lot for helping hospo businesses bring in first workers,
Mm.
trying to find them, identify them in the first place, then induct them into the business, then keep them in the business. Hugely challenging. Young people live with their arms around each other.
Mm.
They don't look up and out. So when you ever see a CEO or a C-suite going, oh, we'll inspire them, they'll want to be like us and stay in this business, they're not thinking that at all. What they're doing is sitting back, passively leaning back, listening to what you've got to say, and then they turn
And
to their mates metaphorically, what did you think? What did you think? Should we believe that?
mm.
That's the dynamic we're existing in.
So picking up on that, Matt, I want to talk about customers because you've talked about how we need to build fans of businesses rather than customers of
Yes.
businesses. Talk
Yeah.
to me about what that means.
Fandom takes its lead. Well, to put it in context, every organization needs to understand its customers. So, who are my customers? And they research those customers to death. The old ways, or let's say methods of understanding customers was through demographics or even psychographics. So, demographics, you know how much you earn, where you live, your status, etc. Or psychographics, trying to understand your need states. Well, mobile phones and distributed technologies, and any idea is available to anyone now with a smartphone.
Mm.
And every idea can potentially come across anyone. So, what is a propensity lens for you to be my customer? I think it's behavior, not how much you earn. And therefore, you get to questions of, well, what role do my ideas play in my potential audience's lives? And when you start to overlay a behavioral spectrum like that, we saw this way back when and just evolved it through the years. You see a propensity of engagement surface between someone who could really love you, let's call that super fans, they're really into you, you play an important role in their life, they feel like they're part of you, to compete people who are completely indifferent to you, and it's
Mm.
just about price or
Mm.
function, and they don't really care who you are. And so that becomes what we call a fandom lens, because when you take that behavioral propensity and overlay the volume of potential audiences, you see well, what we call a cone. You see this shape play out, that you have this opposites. You have propensity for super fandom, for people who love you, want to be part of you, want to be part of what you're about, high engagement but low volume. There's just not many of them.
Mm-hmm.
And then at the other end of the mass market, they're completely indifferent to any of your messages or what you're about, and so really low engagement. But of course, that's the mass market. That's the highest volume. What gets really interesting for me, fandom, is the middle, what we
Mm.
call enthusiasts and casuals. So enthusiasts, I might be into you, but I'm also into other things. And casuals, I'll go along when others are, because it's a social experience. So I always say, well, people go, well, who are casuals? And I did a lot of work with, working on Ed Sheeran last few years. But you go, well, they went to the Ed Sheeran concert not because it was Ed Sheeran, because they went with their mates and it was a social experience. And it turns out that this fandom lens can map for any domain or business domain that you happen to be in by answering one simple question. What role do you think you play, or what role do you play in people's lives?
Mm.
Which gets you beyond the brand, beyond the idea, to the category. You're not about whiter teeth, you're about health and well-being, or about the presentation of myself and the world.
It's a great question.
Anything can be redefined through
Yeah.
that lens, and then when you answer that lens, you can surface a behavioral propensity, and then you can profile who those people are.
Mm.
So I'm just working with an extraordinary business here. He's become a mate. Our daughters are friends, and he's the world's most famous ice cream maker here in New Zealand. He has people traveling from the world to come here and experience his ice cream. They can't believe what he does with it. And I've talked to him about, from a global flagship point of view, you are a super fan business.
Mm.
Of course, most corporate organizations, because he's only got one store, one flagship in the world, most corporates are an indifferent business. Their products are on shelves in supermarkets or distributed through Amazon or whatever it happens to be. Very hard to capture people when they're just seeing you on a shelf.
Mm.
So understanding that spectrum is knowing, am I deepening the experience of what I'm about, or am I trying to broaden the reach of what we're about? And how does that diffuse to deliver the right idea with the right message to the right audience in the right time?
Mm.
That's kind of what fandom's about.
Big piece of work for any organization to go through.
Yeah, really big, although also not, because, I've been taking it out of what you would say industries that have fans,
Mm.
so, entertainment, etc., so work for a big dairy company here, Fonterra. When you go, or actually I've just been working in insurance. So you go, the
Mm.
idea of having fans is really attractive to those working on the brands. Because the question, if you say, well, what would they be fans of you about? Everyone go, I actually don't know.
Don't know. Mm.
Yeah. And so
Mm.
the creative, innovative question becomes, let's go find out. And if
Mm.
they are, you can then say and identify that there are places where you can play a more meaningful role in those people's lives. And there is a spectrum that comes out where people will, those audiences in insurance might not say, I'm a fan of insurance, but the codes and the behaviors and the profiling of that purpose fits the lens of understanding your customer base in
Mm.
that way.
You've mentioned Ed Sheeran a couple of times. What did you do with him?
Like any artist project, an artist is trying to continue their career and grow their career and continue to hold the fans they've already got while introducing new fans to what they're about. That's the same challenge for
That's
any artist,
anything.
any,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
or any brand, exactly.
The other thing you're involved in is wearable technology, which is redefining sleep health through the positional you sleep in and quite wearables. I'm interested in this because I'm a terrible sleeper.
Ah,
What is this about? And I can imagine a lot of leaders are bad sleepers because you wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning and go, oh my God, I haven't done this, or that's going to blow up in me in the morning. And, we're also stressed out most of the time that most of us don't sleep.
and me included. I've done a sleep study where I had to wear the chest thing for 3 days to understand your parasympathetic system and is it turning off or not. This was about 7 years ago. Turns out my system wasn't sleeping off because yes, I would wake up and I'd think I've slept a long time and I feel exhausted. What's going
Mm,
on?
mm,
The way I got into it, the guy I'm working with, my really dear friend now, Milan, is a genius, right? And he is a cardiothoracic surgeon, but he's also an inventor. And so he's always been looking to improve health and well-being outcomes through his scientific expertise.
mm.
And he's invented lots of ideas that the NHS and the UK have turned down. So that's another example of what we are talking about before in terms of command and control, ideas being innovated at the stretch, at the end, at the coalface, never making it back up the chain to say yes to. They could have unlocked an incredible amount of value from this guy. So I'm doing it with him.
Right.
And part of what this comes from looking at outcomes in pregnancy, in stillbirth. We started there and looking at that sleep is a big driver from that. You probably, do you have children, son?
Yeah, I do.
So
Yeah.
yeah, the never sleep on your back in the third trimester, etc. Well,
Yes.
there's
Yes.
reasons for that. Sadly and tragically, it still happens. Then we started to look at that space and entry point into the sleep market. Once you start to understand the sleep science, which is one of the last domains of real well-being understanding, that and longevity, and actually the two things are related, healthy aging. We started to look at the science of sleep and understand that the position you sleep in, what we call positional intelligence, is one of the key factors on whether sleep is working for your life or undoing your life. And so we're working in terms of med tech and wearables, although we don't so much like to say we're wearables because everyone thinks it's about an Oura ring or something on your.
I've got both the Aura ring and the Whoop thing on my hand.
Try to Whoop for a while. And look,
Yeah.
these companies do interesting things with data, but we've just run, so we're in the middle of clinical trials of really proving scientifically that we stand up and it's robust and that the claims or the promises we make we can stand behind. Because as my designer Charlotte said, one of the best creative directors in the world, and she's designing a beautiful brand for us. It's called Whisper Technologies. Quietly brilliant technology for that
Mm,
place at night. We don't
mm,
want to be it. We want your sleep to be it, and we're in the background just
mm.
servicing that in the most quiet way possible and not intervening. Our specificity is getting plus 99% that we know you're asleep, that we know the position you're in, that we can nudge you into a better position for sleep. Ura, as it turns out, there's about 62% around that number. Don't quote me on it, but it's around 60, between 60 and 65% that it even knows if you're truly asleep. Right?
Mm.
So it comes down to wearable intelligence that first can be very specific in its knowing of what state you're in. And then during that cycle of sleep, we are interested in the position of your sleep that has huge impacts on your health and well-being during the day. So it's not just in terms of quality of sleep and how I feel in the morning. Unbeknownst to a lot of people, there's positional sleep apnea. So you're breathing at night and the oxygenation of your blood and the recovery of your biological systems in terms of how you feel in the morning. A lot of people, one of the biggest problems in the world is nighttime teeth grinding.
Yeah, I do that too.
It's called bruxism, and that has all kinds of impact in terms of in your neck, in your
Yep.
head, in your flow, in how you
Yep.
sleep, the position
Yep.
of your sleep. Again, what does that quality of sleep look like for your body to rest and recover to then wake up and then go and perform brilliantly in your day? Yeah, so these are the areas we're working in, which is combining science of sleep, which is really fascinating to understand, then with innovative solutions and new product development, and then thinking really deeply about our own fandom and the role we want to play in people's lives, that we're servicing your great sleep, that we're not the thing you look at and every morning turn on your phone to see your sleep score. The score doesn't really count. It's not very meaningful. We want you to have a felt experience of a better sleep. That's the domain we're in.
Well, Matt, we've talked about so much today. It's been quite a broad conversation, but I've got to the point now where it's something new that we're doing in our podcast is actually getting to understand what you do in your day-to-day life. Because a lot of leaders we talk to them about what they do in their business, but we don't talk to them about what they do when they outside their business.
Yeah.
And so I'm fascinated to find out, what does your morning actually look like? Are you the person who wakes up at a particular time and you have a coffee, exercise? How do you get yourself into the day every morning?
So yeah, it's a great question. I'd love to hear what other people are saying as well, but I know my cadence, my circadian rhythm. I'm an early morning person. So we get up early. My wife and I sort of split it. So she's a yoga person in the morning. I get up and I get out because I'm doing early morning calls on the globe. So
Mm.
I will get out of the home. Kids are still asleep. They're not up yet. I get out. I start my day by journaling because I know I'm still in that slightly sleepy, which is a creative brain. It is the alpha brain as you're waking up. I capture anything new that has surfaced in that time. I mix that between the sort of written experience of capturing, because there's something about the wiring of capturing an idea through the analog experience of capturing it down, and I log that in an AI journal so that I can then use some of that to then a few weeks down the line analyze and come back to, I know I had something 3 or 4 weeks ago, and ask the AI. So I'm mirroring those two things. I try not to have coffee before 7:30, 8, because I know that because your body's already waking up with endorphins. If you're taking caffeine too early, it can interrupt that cycle.
Mm.
I'm then on calls. Once I've got through that creative, let's say processing or journaling, I'm then doing calls, and they are international calls on the projects we're on. That then sets up almost the day's work by knowing the pieces of work I have to do. I tend to have late morning meetings because I know that's a space. And then I'm fortunate enough in the way I work that I know my own rhythm is a bit of a dip off after lunch. So I will do a 30 to 40-minute meditation. I'll
Ah,
actually
okay.
unplug, turn everything off, and I've learned different versions of meditations. I do one called Heart Math, which again relates to the HRV, which is a key indicator for wellness and longevity.
Hmm.
That also relates to your sleep performance. So that test I did with the 3 days, he introduced me to Heart Math meditation, which I highly recommend. And then after that, then I use that last piece of the day, or last piece of that slot of the day, to just get the admin out of the way, because there's not a lot of that's just this kind of the non high performing but productivity work. Just need to get it done. Then I'm into family time, so I tend, my wife does the morning, I tend to do the evening, and then after if I'll often be picking up and updating the work or the progression we have done with a quick check-in around parts of the world, or if I'm lucky enough, I'll get in and carry on and get into some wind down time with a bit of Netflix. I'll
Mm.
often throw in a dog walk in that. So we've got a dog, so that's a great way that makes you get out. And then of course I keep fit like everyone else and squeeze in the gym 3 or 4 times a week in that rhythm. That
Yeah.
tends to be outside of kids and parenting and being a dad. That tends to be, I don't work Monday to Fridays. I don't see a work rhythm that way. Work for me is a true joy and a privilege, and so that tends to run regular, pretty much,
Mm.
7 days a week.
When you do feel busy and overwhelmed, which all of us have that, what are the small things you come back to steady yourself?
Generally, one thing, well, two things, I guess I should say. One is I try and take a beat and get everything out of what's getting jumbled in the head and just see it anew. Just scratch it down and mind map. I often have pieces of A3 paper. I'm just mind mapping everything down. And if I can get it out of here and see it, something about the process of doing that tends to calm me down, and I know that actually puts me in a slight creative space, and instinctively or intuitively I then feel for the place where I should just, okay, that's what we focus on. That's the first thing. The second thing is I connect with someone else. Grab a phone call, and it's not even that I'm using them to unload. It's just, how are you? What's going on for you? Get out of myself, get some of that human connection going. And it's what my old mentor used to talk about, is that we can be understanding company for each other. We each can connect and bring our own experiences to bear. And just through the act of empathizing or understanding where each other's at, there is something about that human connection where you get off the call and you feel lifted up anew. You just feel, the heartfelt connection with another human does something beyond the rational brain, gets us back into our body. So embody ourselves again. Because I think at those points of being overwhelmed and stressed, it's the nervous system that's playing up as much as it is the conscious anxiety we might experience. If we can embody ourselves again, that nervous system can help reboot us back to a sense of calm and equilibrium.
Who's had the biggest impact on your career, on the way you approach work? And what were some of the key things you took from them?
Oh, that's a really good question. I didn't prepare for that at all. My go-to is, I had been in an innovation agency. I didn't know those existed. I did 2 years there. I went through a big health crisis, and I came out the other side of that. And I wasn't sure about staying in that agency, and so I sort of left without a big plan. And I got a call from a very dear friend who said, "What are you up to?" And I said, "I'm trying to figure it out." She said, "Well, why you're trying to figure it out? BBC Radio 1 needs some help. Would you like to meet them?" And it was the first time I sat there honestly with a client and said, "I know nothing about radio," right? "But I know a little bit about innovation." And they said, "Great, because we know nothing about innovation and everything about radio." And I said, "Look, if you're up for it, I'd like to go on a journey where we co-create the outcomes together." So we do a bit, we check in. We don't design a 3 or 5 year transformation program. You know the immediate things that need fixing right now to help turn this around, the performance around. Let's attack that. And through the doing of that, we'll surface the next thing we should go and attack. And they were so up for it, they trusted that that would work. It was the only client at that point that would trust that that was appropriate. Most boards or C-suites, as you know, they won't sign off on a big program like that. They need the 5 year horizon program, and that's the milestones we're going through. We did that work iteratively, productively, human-led, deep. That's where fandom came from. That's where it was born. That's where we brought that lens to understand, because their research wasn't working for them. We addressed the problems that were needed during the daytime. We grew the talent to grow that themselves. So we were baking in capabilities to do it for themselves. I was working myself out of a job. Then we went and fixed the other part of the business, because radio was daytime and nighttime. Then we took the same program elements, translated them for the evening work. We just went on a journey together, and it was so exciting. It was the most transformative experience of my working career, because not only was I doing, I was learning at the same time. And same for them. And together we truly collaborated, outstanding, award-winning, breakthrough impact.
What a great story.
Yeah, it was fantastic. And I still dine out on it to this day, that
I bet you do.
some of those principles we brought alive today, back then, a long time
Yes.
ago, organizations still cannot make work.
Still, yeah. So true. My last question is, what do you see as the future of leadership?
I would say human-led and creative. Don't mean creative in terms of that leader is responsible for solving the problem. What that leader is highly empathetic and creative, and creates the conditions for high-performing people to be continually creating new solutions. Yeah.
Matt Hart, thank you so much for your time. It's been a fascinating conversation. I've loved every minute of it, and I'm sure our audience will too. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Sana. Thank you very much for having me, and thanks for connecting us.
If you like what you've heard, please share, rate and review this podcast, and don't forget to share it with anyone who might benefit from hearing it. The producer of Future Fit Leadership is Maritza Barone from Guide Your Light Network. If you would like to reach out to me, please DM me on any of my social media platforms. I'm available for speaking at conferences or consulting to your business. Future Fit is created in partnership with Future Leadership, a capability ecosystem for boards and executives. If you'd like to join the community and receive a free takeaway each week, sign up to the Future Exchange app in my show notes. Thank you for having me in your space.
This is a Guide Your Light Network production, creating podcasts with purpose.